Hello there. Hope you're all excited to get to participate in Headache on the Hill this year. My name is James Queally, and I'm a reporter for the Los Angeles Times. I've been a print media reporter for the past 15 years, and every one of those years, my inbox gets flooded with pitches for stories. Some of them from public relation reps, some of them are from readers, some of them even these days are generated by AI. But the modern day newspaper reporter's inbox is an extremely competitive place, and we can only get so much written each day. So I'm here to help you break through all that noise and share some tips and tricks with you on getting your story told about your advocacy with Headache on the Hill this year. So let's get started. We first got to get a reporter interested, and more importantly, we've got to get the right reporter interested. Certain bad faith media criticisms aside, the best bet for you to get a clean, straight ahead and detailed story written about your day in DC is to go through your local paper of record, that being the paper that covers the city or the county you live in. So let's focus on that. How do we pick a reporter? Most newspapers will have staff directories. They'll give you a general idea of people's assignments or beats, which generally refers to what they cover. Ideally, you're either going to want to try a reporter who covers local news, maybe the town, the city you live in, or health or science issues, given what Headache on the Hill is involved with. I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to target the right reporter. There's 37,000 unread emails in my LA Times account right now. And I bet good money, at least a quarter of those are unopened press releases on, dating trends or pets doing tricks, all, really good culture stories or really good local human interest stories. But I am the criminal court reporter, and I am not the person who's going to write those. So the person who wants that story told has already lost their battle. So let's get to the right person. Ideally, we want to talk to people who cover local news, health, science, maybe features. Political reporters, given that a lot of you are meeting with legislators, they can be helpful, specifically the person who covers the representative you're meeting with, but that can get a little tricky. So let's hold off on that for the first wave of pitches we're going to send. Now, just because you contact a reporter pitching a story, it doesn't mean that's the story they intend to write. A political reporter could, for instance, try to use your interview for some larger piece they're doing. So that's why we want to avoid them. Other people we want to avoid at the gate are editors. They have even more crowded inboxes than reporters. And it's also just putting another step between you and the journalist you're trying to contact. So we can come back to them on maybe a second round of pitches. But for now, let's stay focused on, again, local news reporters, health and science reporters, feature reporters. Like I said, most places will have directories. So again, you're going to want to scroll through that. Normally, if you just search the outlet name and the newsroom's title, for my current paper, you would just search Los Angeles Times staff directory. You'll get a rolling list of reporters to go through, and you should be able to find the right one just by looking for, again, those terms: health reporter, science reporter, might be medical affairs reporter, but something like that is what you want to target. Once we get to the right reporter, then we want to get our perfect pitch. Again, like I said, my inbox is a traffic jam right now, and I tend to fly by everything. I'm looking for releases from the people I cover. Anything I see that I don't recognize is almost easy to ignore. So you want to do something that stands out, but you also want to do something that is specific to that person. So the first thing I want you to do is treat your subject line like it's a headline. The same way that we write headlines to try to catch your eye while you're scrolling through social media or you're scrolling through a newspaper's website, you want to craft your email subject line to do the same thing, to stick out from the noise and grab my attention. I would be, very specific, using eyesight grabbing words, using the state or county that's even in the paper's name. I used to work for a paper called the Newark Star Ledger. The word Newark being in an email head is going to make me click on it if I don't recognize the sender more likely than something about the actual event. So, I would try, again, especially if you're doing a hyperlocal outlet: Delaware woman heads to Capitol Hill for headache advocacy, Princeton man to meet with, name the representative if you're targeting the political reporter. Try to do anything cute, clever, funny. I know that's our instinct sometimes, but it's very likely to get ignored. So I would try, like I said, again, to stay very specific, stay very on target. It's very possible that that first email could get ignored. Like I said, inboxes are crowded. People miss emails for a number of reasons. You might have sent it outside of the 9 to 5 hours. So being personal is a good idea. If they list a phone number, use it. We are, reporters take calls from people they don't know all the time. We are the people that robocallers and spam callers love, right? You are very likely to get someone to pick up the phone. A lot of times I get a block call from a block number, and I don't recognize them, hoping it's a source or a detective or somebody who's going to give me information under the story. It's our job is not to be shy, so you should not be shy in reaching out to us. The thing is, again, now once you do this, let's talk about the actual email. Let's talk about the actual phone call. You want to be personal. You want to be concise, pepper them with key details. The Congress member you're meeting with, a little bit of your personal journey with headache issues, maybe a little bit on how you got involved with Headache on the Hill. I know that you guys have information you want to get out about, again, about advocacy, about the issues you're facing, but reporters are also sometimes more drawn, I think personally, at least, to narrative and emotion than they can be to a science specific story. Again, if you're dealing with a science or health reporter, you might get further with the actual medical issues at play. But if you're dealing with kind of a more general assignment reporter, who you are, how migraines and long-term headache suffering affects you, what the emotional journey of people going to this event, I think that might resonate more. So you want to lean into that. It also helps to research the reporter. We're ego driven. I've got 20,000 Twitter followers, and I'm usually desperate for a good amount of their attention. The tiniest bit of homework here can go a long way. Once you isolate, or rather isolate, that sounds ominous. Once you pick the reporter that you want to target, like I said, pull up there. Most will have a bio page separate from the directory. If you search my name and Los Angeles Times right now, you'll get a list of the last however many stories I've written. Find one that either ties to this issue, which would be obviously helpful, or just one you found remotely interesting. Mention that early in your pitch. Like you could even start with that. I just read your article on cats that can skateboard, and I thought that might make you a good person to speak to about this. Let them know that you know who they are, stoke their ego a little bit, and again, they may come along for the ride easier. All right, so let's say you found the right reporter, you sent the emails, you've made the phone calls, and no one is listening. What do we do now? We could give up, but I assume that is not the advice you want. So now let's go back to some of those options that we discussed earlier. It's not a bad idea to try editors now. Like I said, editors, it's a double-edged sword. They might have more to do. They might have less of bandwidth to pay attention, less of an attention span, a more crowded inbox, but also they're the bosses. And sometimes they are dying for copy. There are once a month, I get an email from my editor's editor that is just, they basically beg, plea for stories. So if you send them something that catches their eye, they may just make a reporter do the story you want done. So again, I wouldn't go there the first wave, but if a few days or a week goes by and none of the prior efforts are working, I would try to find, again, either the editor for the section of reporter you're trying to get a hold of, which would be like if it's a science or health reporter, there is going to be a specific editor to that. You'll be able to see in the directory who reports to who. Or if you're just going more the local news GA route, just find the main news editor for the paper and try them. This is also a good place to go to political reporters, find out, this would normally be in a directory under a section called State House, or whatever state you live in, it would be whatever the capital of your state is, the bureau. So in New York, that would be the Albany Bureau, New Jersey, the Trenton Bureau, where I live in California, the Sacramento Bureau. Find that bureau, find the reporters who are based there, and then try to find somebody who covers a legislator you're meeting with, if that is something you're doing during the event. Failing those two options, you can also do it yourself. You can pitch an op-ed, which is a opinion editorial section of the paper. You may know this, you may not. The way a newsroom is divided, people who report facts like me are editorial, and then the opinion section is the people who write columns, give endorsements in political races, that kind of stuff. They will also take submissions of personal essays, letters to the editor. I've seen you guys get stories published like this before. So if you are comfortable writing the story yourself, writing about your own experience, you can do that as well. This process can take a little bit longer. So depending on how far out from the event you're viewing this, I would try to pitch that no later than a month or 3 weeks beforehand, because usually that goes into a pod of submissions, probably a general email. Somebody has to pick it out, and there may even be an editing process to getting it published. So that is the only thing is, if every other avenue has failed, you may want to try this no later than 3 weeks out from the event. Let's talk about the interview itself. Once you get through the door, once you get a reporter who wants to tell the story that you are trying to get told, let's make sure we sound good in that conversation. This is going to sound obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Relax. Talk like you're talking to a neighbor, to a coworker, polite and formal, not rigid. A good interviewer, which I tend to hope that I usually am, what I try to do is lull people into a conversation, make them forget they're in a Q&A, not try to think about what's coming next. There'll be interjections, there will be asides from them. Let them guide it, let them steer it, but don't worry about getting every piece of information you want published in response to every single question. There's going to be time, reporters structure an interview a certain way. So let them draw it out, let them, kind of make it feel natural. Like I say here up here, it's not TV, it's not radio. I hate listening to when I do TV or radio interviews because I have a bad habit going you've probably seen me do it a few times here. Please don't republish this anywhere beyond where it's supposed to be. But yeah, see, I just did it there. The good thing is in print media, those don't exist. They might as well have not happened. If you drag or pause or something like that, you let a like or an out, they're probably just going to ellipsis by it or pretend it didn't occur. You'll see this in quotes all the time. Also, a good reporter for a newspaper is going to clean up your quotes, not in any manipulative way, not in any way that changes the facts, but if you drift or pause, if you, like I said, again, use those kind of stopgap phrases that we all use when we're trying to talk out loud, a reporter is probably going to skim by them. So don't worry about that. Sticking to the question is also very important. Good quotes are the core to any good story. I have definitely had interviews where someone is incredibly interesting and they have a great story to tell, but they cannot tell it concisely. They cannot tell it in the bits and chunks that I need. They just fly all over the place and they're disconcerted, and that doesn't help. That's why we structure interviews. That's why we are trying to get you through the story beats in a certain order for a reason. So, if they ask you why you're going to this event, just tell them your origin story. Tell them what you're dealing with. Don't necessarily get into what happened when you were there. They're going to get to that. And you want to let them steer it, so they're getting, sometimes, at least for me, when I'm in the middle of an interview, I'm almost writing the story in my head as it's happening, and it can get disruptive if you fly away from where we're trying to guide you. So just stay on task and you'll be fine. Now there is a possibility, this is most likely in the scenario that you're in an interview with the political reporter, right, with someone who covers the legislature. They may try to steer the conversation in a direction you're not comfortable with. Let's say they start asking critical questions about the legislator that you met with. You're not a public official, so you do not owe anyone responses to questions. You do not have to engage with that, whether you agree with them or not. Obviously, that's not going to help the message you're trying to get out. So, you're not under scrutiny. Don't freeze up. Please do not say the two worst words in journalism, which are no comment. Just politely deflect and move on. I was just glad Senator Queally was willing to lend his time to this important issue, etc. And that's it. That's fine. I won't pester you beyond there. Last thing, you've probably heard the phrases on the record or off the record before. You shouldn't get too deep into this area, but since you are talking about sensitive medical issues, there might be some attribution agreements to strike ahead of time. You may want to only use your first name, last initials. Let's quickly go through the rules on that, just so there's no thorny issues there. Really simply, on the record means they can use everything. They can quote you verbatim. They can use your age, your place of work, anything that they know about you or they can look up on you, and they can use every single word you said in the interview. Off the record means it's a black box. They can't use anything. They can't publish it. It's of no value. The only thing you have to worry about here is just setting the attribution terms at the start of the interview, because you can't really switch back and forth. That can get confusing. So let's say you do want to only be referred, I only want to say I'm doing this interview and I only want to be referred to as James Q. Just up front, I would make that clear and then not change the terms. And that's all there is to it, because you can't unring the bell. But once it's set, and that's fine. The only other thing I would say is if you do need to explain something that you don't want published, for context, you could say, excuse me, this part is off the record, and just make sure they agree to that before you move forward. That's because ultimately it's an ethical consideration, not a legal one, but it is their discretion. So just be clear, just be upfront on those terms, and everything should be fine. All right, guys, thanks for taking the time to hear me out today. I hope you learned something. I hope these quick and easy tips and tricks help you out with your interview and pitch process, and I hope you get your stories told. Good luck at Headache on the Hill.